2019, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un ordered the demolition of the world's first floating hotel docked in North Korea. The hotel is currently owned by a South Korean company that bought it from a Japanese one.
I already
It was a
watched
major
the
hit in
Karen trailer
Vietnam,
last
but
time.
it was originally made for Australia, designed in Sweden, and built
Thanks to
in
the Prime,
Singapore.
Silver King.
Traveling over 14,000 kilometers around the world, the hotel has experienced cyclones, fire, World War II ammunition, and a murder. This may all sound confusing to you, so let's start at the beginning. In the 1980s, Doug Tarka, the town developer of Townsville, and his son Peter Tarka wanted something unusual and innovative to attract tourists to their city. Townsville is a city in Australia located near the famous Great Barrier Reef. Hailed
What a
as
cool name.
natural
They'd literally
wonder,
name
the
themselves
Great
after
Barrier
Powerpuff
Reef is
Girls.
the world's largest coral reef system. The unmatched beauty of the life under the seawater
Thanks,
brings
Reese,
millions
Spuna.
of tourists from around the world to this area. The original plan of Doug Tarka was to permanently moor 3 cruise ships along the city
Thanks to
coast
Prime.
to create a safe anchorage on the
Peril?
reef, but this plan was later rejected as being too impractical.
And the Prime
They
Mellow.
then came up with another brilliant idea. They would build the world's first floating hotel. Now, I know what you're thinking, we already have floating hotels. They're called ships, and they've been around for centuries.
Yeah, they
But Doug
suck.
Tarka didn't want a ship, he wanted a floating hotel. He believed that you could tell the difference when you see one. The
Thanks to
floating
give sub
hotel
Echo
would
and
be 7
resub
stories
Apartment
high,
Rat.
90 meters
Prime
long,
Dog.
and its width would be shorter than that of a typical cruise ship. Unlike a ship, it would not propel on its own, rather it would sit still on the seawater and could occasionally be moved from one place to another
It sounds
using a
miserable.
carrier ship.
What's the
A
point?
Swedish company designed the hotel, and the construction began in
All
Singapore.
the misery
at a
of
company
being in
that
a
built
hotel,
offshore living
but with the benefit of
quarters
being
at oil
stranded
wells.
in the middle of the
The
ocean.
hotel building costs came with a hefty price tag, estimated to be up to 20 million US dollars, and adjusted for inflation around 42 million in 2020.
It's quite literally
Upon
Alcatraz.
completion, the
They made
innovative hotel was
Alcatraz.
towed all the way from Singapore to Australia for its grand unveiling. A massive, heavy lift ship carried the hotel more than 4,000 kilometers to its destination off the Australian coast. After arriving, it was connected to a number of anchors to stop it from floating away. The floating hotel was named the Four Seasons Great Barrier Reef Resort after the names of 2 stakeholders, Four Seasons and the Great Barrier Reef Holdings Limited. The hotel sat over
Thanks,
the
Reese,
John
big
Brewer
boy.
Reef in the open sea some 70 kilometers off the coast of Townsville.
Why?
From a distance, it looked like a 7-story building was resting on endless seawater. As you come closer, you could see that the hotel was much more than just a giant building. It was a world-first attempt to have people staying on the reef in a floating hotel. The hotel building was decked out with all of the typical in-hotel luxuries,
Seth.
including 200 lavishly furnished rooms, along with a glowing neon
Wow,
nightclub,
look at
discos,
that.
bars, a gym, a sauna,
Is there
a
anyone under the
library,
age of 50 there?
a 100-seat theater, a conference center, and a helipad. Want to play tennis on the surface of an ocean? The hotel has a floating tennis court. Fancy swimming in fresh water while surrounded by the endless seawater? The hotel even has
Just go on a
freshwater
cruise.
swimming pool.
Just go on a cruise.
The hotel was the perfect place for diving, fishing, and other underwater exploration. Guests could also submerge themselves in underwater adventures with the use of the hotel's submarine. Other fish spotting opportunities came in many forms. Guests could jump straight from a platform into the sea for a casual mid-ocean swim, while glass-bottom boats allowed for low-stress views of the ocean's residents. The hotel also had an underwater viewing area where visitors
Exit Tier
could
1.
feast their eyes on
Eyes
fish
sewn
without
shut.
ever leaving the hotel. The hotel was surrounded by colorful coral, which the area is famous for. Other creatures and critters in the area included giant clams, reef sharks, blue starfish, and a whole range of fish. For those interested in tasting the delectable delights of the 7 seas, there were 2 restaurants in the hotel with plenty of fish on the menu. Diners had the opportunity of tasting some of the freshest fish around.
This seems like
From
such a
the look of
miserable
it, the
experience.
hotel was one of the best things that happened to coral reef tourism in the area, but only on paper. In reality, the hotel was a disaster, to say the least.
Thanks, Resub Cosmic.
The Great Barrier Reef Resort looked good on paper, but it had gotten into hot water right from the very beginning.
You can check it out,
First,
Krusty.
a contract dispute with the Singapore shipbuilder delayed the delivery of the hotel
Makes
for
the
over
bits
6
tacky.
months, and when it did finally arrive in Australia, Cyclone Charlie struck, and 62-mile-an-hour winds buffeted the 7-story luxury hotel. The damage was minor, but the hotel couldn't be opened until March of 1988. The delay cost the owners millions of dollars in
Thanks,
lost
resub
revenue
pump.
and canceled tickets, as the hotel missed the lucrative North Hemisphere winter tourist market. With reduced prices and the hype around the novel concept of a floating paradise, the hotel opened with a good 85% occupancy.
Oh, that's not bad.
Even then, all these unusual attractions came at a hefty fee. One night in the hotel could cost anywhere from $550 to $1,100 per
Jesus
room.
Christ.
A major
Is
reason
it
for the
bits
high prices
Cyrillic?
was the unusually high operating cost of
It's
the hotel.
Guantanamo Bay that you
A
pay to
typical
go
cruise
to.
ship travels from one place to another, exploiting local laws and loopholes to keep the operating cost low. This wasn't possible in the case of the floating hotel. Situated in the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park, this hotel had to measure up to the strict environmental standards to protect the sea life surrounding the complex. There was no toxic paint on the hull, and no waste was discharged into the surrounding water. Instead, all sewage and liquid waste were treated before then being dumped many miles outside the reef. Trash was all
Nice.
incinerated before being
As
transported
a tier
back to the
1 lethal
mainland.
protector.
Below the main deck of the hotel, a watertight compartment housed sewage treatment
The Reese of
machinery,
Harry.
incinerators, diesel generators, a huge air conditioning system, a desalination plant that could produce up to 152 tons of fresh water a day, and a repair shop. The repair shop was capable of repairing anything from generators to handbags. The hotel even had a lab where marine researchers studied seabird droppings to make sure the hotel wasn't feeding scraps to local birds.
What?
Because of these measures, the hotel was thought to
What?
be completely unharmful.
You had
to the
bird
environment
shit
surrounding it.
researchers? Why?
The hotel was anchored some 70 kilometers away from the coast of Townsville, and the only way to access the hotel was via water taxis, which would ferry guests from the shore all the way to the hotel's entrance, in a journey which took 90 minutes and cost $120.
There's the resub overlord.
Alternatively, richer guests could take the quicker and more luxurious 20-minute helicopter jaunt that cost $325. Rough weather often disrupted these journeys. If choppy water, high winds, or bad weather struck, it often would become difficult for boats and helicopters to undertake their trips. Visitors would often cancel their trips because of bad weather, and even those who could make it complained about high turbulence and seasickness. In August
sounds about
of
right.
1988, one of the taxis caught fire and the passengers were seriously injured. The main selling point of the hotel, the
How did that
Coral
happen?
Reef site, was also a little strange. Between 90 to 95% of the coral in the John Brewer Reef had already been eaten up in the preceding 5
Thanks,
years.
resub Johnson
Two
boy.
invasions
Give
of the
sub
crown
Joe
of thorns
Star.
starfish had gobbled up the vast majority of the coral. Furthermore, guests who didn't do scuba diving or snorkeling often complained about the lack of live entertainment in the hotel. The widely marketed
Yeah, it's a
swimming
hotel.
pool was long gone in a cyclone attack. The final nail in the coffin came in the form of World War II ammunition. In September 1988, some scuba diving guests found 100 tons of World War II ammunition,
Jackpot.
including anti-tank missiles, only 3 kilometers away from the hotel. The Navy investigated and claimed that the ammunition was just far away enough not to pose a threat. Apparently, until around 1950,
A
it was
threat of
legal
what?
to dump live ammunition offshore.
Well, the fish aren't going to
Such
start
news
using
put a
it.
permanent
They're not going to
dent
start
on the
shooting at the
reputation
hotel.
of the resort.
What do you
Who
mean?
would want to spend their vacation floating over a huge arsenal of World War II ammunition?
Of
To
exploding?
hold visitors, the hotel reduced
What's going to
prices
cause a
even
spark
further
underwater to blow up a
only
fucking tank shell?
$130 per night for a double room. The enterprise also suffered from a bitter feud between the owners and the operators, poor management, hapless marketing, and eventually bookings began to dry up.
The ship hitting it?
During
It's
the
not a
final
ship.
few months,
It's
the
stationary.
hotel registered only 20 to 25%
Oh, you mean a ship in general hitting
occupancy.
it? I guess maybe.
Due to this loss of money, the hotel needed to sail to more affordable waters. The hotel owners sold the hotel to a Japanese company in 1989, only a year after the hotel had opened its doors in Australia. These new owners transported the hotel to Ho Chi Minh City in the south of Vietnam. At that time, Vietnam was experiencing a post-war tourism boom. Ho Chi Minh City was flooded with foreign visitors, but the city didn't have many high-class accommodations for rich people. As an already packaged, ready-to-go facility, the floating hotel seemed perfect, so the new owners were willing to take the gamble. The journey from its Australian port to Ho Chi Minh City was another epic adventure of over 5,000 kilometers. Upon its arrival, the hotel was moored in the Saigon River, renovated to give it a local look, and renamed the Saigon Floating Hotel. The place
Give it a cool name. Stop just calling it Floating Hotel.
In Vietnam, the Saigon Floating Hotel
became
became
Beef
an instant
Thunder
hit. The country's first
Master.
foreign-invested hotel offered a range of
That needs
luxurious
work, actually.
facilities,
Just come up with something
services,
better.
and 400 highly trained staff. In 1995, the hotel charged up to $335 per room per night, in a country where the average person earned less than $350 per year. In its stay of more than 9 years, the Saigon Floating Hotel became a widely celebrated icon of the rise of tourism in Vietnam. Locals affectionately knew the hotel as the Floater. Its appeal began to wither in 1997, however, when Vietnam's existing hotels were renovated and many other foreign companies joined the lucrative market. Once more, the hotel owners decided to uproot. They sold the hotel to South Korean Asan, the tourism arm of Hyundai, who again decided to move elsewhere in an attempt to pick up profits.
Just
This
fucking
time,
demolish
the hotel
it.
set sail for the unusual
Worthless.
location of North Korea.
And the tennis court's not there anymore.
Renamed to Hotel Haegeumgang, the world's first floating hotel was anchored at the Mount Kumgang tourist region near the heavily guarded DMZ border, which opened in 1998 as a north-south experiment in tourism. At the time, relations between North Korea and South Korea were improving. It was hoped that the hotel might attract tourists from South Korea and help to ease these relations even further. Between 1998 and 2008, the Floating Hotel was the official venue for the emotional reunion of families divided by the 1950 to 1953 Korean War, where South Korean families could meet their relatives
I wouldn't
in the
expect
North,
that.
many of which had not seen their loved ones for over 6 decades.
There's
But in
2
2008, yet another bad hand was dealt for the aging vessel when a North Korean soldier shot and killed a South Korean tourist at the resort. Seoul quickly ceased all tours in the region. Since then, the once celebrated floating hotel has been eerily silent and rusting at the edge of North Korea without maintenance. However, it remains open to local tourists, and I found a few Google reviews of the hotel that were made recently. In 2019, Kim Jong-un visited the site and criticized the facilities. He claimed that the facilities were, quote, not only very backward in terms of architecture,
but it's old.
So shabby as they are not properly cared for. The buildings are just a hodgepodge with no national character at all. He then demanded the demolition of unpleasant facilities and the building of new modern ones. That has yet to happen. The hotel remains in North Korea in Kumgang Port. Using Google Maps, you can still see it. So that was the story of the world's first floating hotel, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Why does he keep saying first? Is there more than one now?
If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, please consider subscribing. And if you want to support this channel, I've created a page.
I can't imagine like it's overly common for floating hotels to exist. Couldn't it also just be called the world's only floating hotel? Makes the resub Bazer Taser. Oh, Bazer Taser. And the resub Rohan.